Hi, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to Barely Conscious and Streaming. This is episode 8. Can you guys believe it? And I'm here with one of my favorite people, Erika Jefferson, founder of BWISE. Erika, tell me a little bit about yourself, and we're just going to dive right in after you introduce yourself.
Awesome. So I'm always encouraging people to have their 30-second elevator pitch. So mine is I am the president and founder of Black Women in Science and Engineering, also known as BWISE. Our focus is on ensuring that there are opportunities for Black women in all industries at all levels. We are working on bridging the leadership gap for Black women in all areas of STEM. And the way we do that is by partnering with some amazing organizations around the globe who are looking for talented scientists, engineers, technologists, and life science and medical professionals. So this is our 10th year. Just doesn't seem like it's been that long. And
That's so
I
awesome.
tell people I am an accidental entrepreneur. I had no plans, thoughts, hopes, dreams of becoming an entrepreneur. And I think I have grown as much as hopefully some of the women that we have met and partnered and worked with have grown. And it's just been a very eye-opening experience. I don't think I could have ever imagined doing this, but it's been wonderful. Tiring sometimes, but wonderful nevertheless.
The good work is always tiring, though, I
That's
feel,
true.
but what I love about doing good work is it's the kind of work that actually gives back to you. It
That's right.
reciprocates. And so as you're pouring out, like, you get that reciprocity, not just from like people growing and developing, but like you said, like you grow in the process.
Exactly.
um and then, like, you end up like leaving places that like you've been working the whole day refreshed,
Exactly.
or glowing, and people are like, wow, you don't even look tired. And
Yep.
it's like, yeah, I always tell people that's my Jesus glow. I can't take credit for it.
So
Or
good.
maybe it's just sweat because I'm always sweating. um
Glowing.
oh, let me say, like Katy Perry, although we don't, people are kind of dragging her right now. Look at me, I'm glistening.
Right. I,
But Erika, thank you so much for like just getting us there, right? And so I just really want to talk about how you even got into STEM. Like, I feel like a lot of times when we look at the news, we look at media, there's this idea that like Black people haven't been in STEM all this time, right?
right.
And of course, like, if you've been alive for more than 5 minutes, you know that that's not true.
That's true.
um and so tell us about how you even decided you were gonna like go into that field, and like what that journey was like, and go as far back as you want to. um
Well, my dad is or was a high school math teacher. And so perhaps my affinity for math and science came
mhm.
genetically from him. But I always like learning and experiencing new things. And so I was very interested and also very talented in chemistry.
Mhm.
And so I said, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to be a chemist. As much as I knew about
Yeah,
what a chemist did, I just knew I liked chemistry.
chemistry.
And I was fortunate. I hope they're doing things like this these days, but I was fortunate to be a part of an organization called the Explorers, which was an offshoot of the Boy Scouts.
Mm,
And what they would do is bring people, and you didn't have to be a young man to be a
yeah,
part of it, but bring people, young people together and have them meet people who were actually working in that field.
yeah.
And so I don't remember his name, but I remember what he said. He when I said, I want to be a chemist. And he was like, you don't want to be a chemist. I was like, I don't want to be a chemist. And he was like, no. And I remember he told the story of, I think it was acetaminophen. And,
Mm,
I can't remember. I think he was tied to the discovery of that some kind of way, but I don't
yeah.
remember his name. And he said, chemists don't make any money. You don't want to be a chemist. You want to be a chemical engineer.
Mm,
So literally, there are a few people I know who've never veered, like, I want to be a doctor from the time they
yeah.
could walk. But I never thought of another career. And I was like, maybe I'll be an accountant. I never thought of anything else. And that was probably sometimes my problem is I was like, I don't know what else. I've already committed to being this chemical engineer. I don't know what other options there are for me. But when I was a young child or a student, there were no role models. I'm sure Mae Jemison was doing her thing in Chicago at that time. She certainly was in medical school, but she wasn't famous enough for people broadly to know who she was. So I did not know, all the people, the amazing women that we now, have access to via the internet that had done things, right? I think the first Black woman to get a PhD got it at the University of Chicago. I'm from Chicago, in German, no less. Just think about that. In I think the 1920s. And so we just have not, our stories have not been told. So whenever people ask me to come and speak, which that is not my favorite thing, I'm a behind the scenes type of person. I always say, I'm late. You need to go back in history. Before you get to me, there are a ton of other folks that you need to know about. And we can't just stop at Katherine Johnson. I think that was an amazing story. But if we only focus on her and the accomplishments of those women of that era in that industry, we're missing out on so many.
Many people.
Yes, every year we do Black Herstory, and we usually pick a theme. This year was Black Women in AI, but we've done Black women entrepreneurs in STEM. We've done Black women in academia in STEM. We've, you name the different parts of or functions that people can work in.
Essentially, the whole ecosystem of STEM is represented in some way. No, I think that's so awesome. I try to do the same thing with like legal stuff, right? So it's like I have my own newsletter where I talk about legal work, but I try my best to talk about as much of the different areas that I know about or have some awareness of, because I think it's so important when you're growing up and when you're thinking about where you want to go, what is available to me? How can I use this degree? How can I use this knowledge? Once I have the degree, because it doesn't end there, right? How can I use this knowledge, right? How can I build on what I already know? And then do something amazing, right? How do I combine my chemical engineering degree with an MBA to do more? And I think that's so important and maybe it's the college professor in me, because I had to do a lot of career counseling when I was working as a professor, and so and a lot of my looking back, a lot of my students were STEM. Because the CUNY that I was working at York, they had a huge nursing program, tech program, engineering program. And so I found myself having a lot of those students in my English courses. And so I had to imagine me trying to keep engineers focused in my writing class,
a lot. Engineers are not known to be great writers.
And it's funny because I remember making a case. I remember having to make that case for them too. Hey, I know you think this class isn't as important as your chemistry class, and then I would kind of just casually drop, but I was a double major and I was a chemistry and English major, so you can know science and be able to read and write too, and so it's funny, and I had a math scholarship in college too, and so it's so funny, I didn't know that about you, so now I'm just trying to drop all the things we have similarities with, so I can feel like we're even more best friends,
of course.
But oh wow, this is so cool, but that for me it was I was able to reach these students because they were able to connect with me, and I haven't practiced chemistry in ages, so I won't try to front oh yeah, I'm not gonna try to talk about anything. I think the only thing I remember through and through is probably Avogadro's number, and it's because
that's impressive.
And it's only because I celebrate Mole Day every year, So I really kept it alive in my
Yeah.
own life, but I remember when I first started teaching, and while I was still like in the classroom,
Mm-hmm.
I stayed current because that's how I would get my students who were a little bit kind of like, oh, I don't know, I'm not a good writer. And
Right.
I'd be kind of like, yeah, but what if you become like the chief technology officer, bro? Like,
Yeah.
no one's going to understand like
Right.
your jargon. So, like, I'm going to teach you how to talk to
You
people,
have to be able to communicate effectively,
you
especially
know?
senior levels, right?
Yeah.
You have to be
Yeah.
able to convince and persuade people, and most times that's done, via writing. So that's
Yeah.
important.
No, it's so perfect, and it's so funny because that like you're probably like, is she gonna keep rambling? But the reason why I was rambling is because I want to get to your senior roles. Like when you started, when did you decide, what? Like I wanna expand. I wanna
Mhm.
grow. I wanna start developing other people. I wanna take on
Mhm.
more responsibility. And
Mhm.
what was that shift like mentally, and like how did you kind of decide your path? Like did you decide it or was it accidental? What were some of the pivots? So basically tell us everything.
I wish I could say that you know what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna take this route. I never, everything was just an opportunity to do something.
Mm-hmm.
It was never thought out. Maybe I should have. Maybe things would have, turned out differently, but just opportunities came my
Mm-hmm.
way. I got an opportunity to transition out of operations manufacturing into business development. And I tell people I use so much of what I learned in those years, in
Mm-hmm.
those roles, because that's what the foundation of
Yeah.
your education and your first jobs are supposed to do. Now you're supposed to be
Mm-hmm.
able to have conversations with a wide variety of folks. I was telling somebody maybe a couple weeks ago, we were talking about contracts, and I said, yes, I would always draft the first version of
Mm.
the contracts because they had to have, technical and financial
Yeah.
information. And I learned over time, how, what the attorneys expected in contract. No, you got
Mm-hmm.
to put this, right? I always remember the thing I remember, and I tell people to this day, you got to put it on your own paper. Make sure contracts are on your paper.
Yeah.
So I learned a lot during that time, and not just like the business,
Mm-hmm.
but human nature.
Yeah.
And what motivates people, what doesn't motivate people, how things work, right? Sometimes it's not clear cut. If you do A, then B will happen, right?
Yeah.
Be able, like, I remember that time when I did this and this has happened, or someone told me how it happened. So I'm sure most people, if they look back over their career, they could say, wow, I see how everything has come
Mm-hmm.
together. Usually something happens and kind of slide over and do something else when you have an opportunity to pause when you're not in the thick of it. But I can say that even though I would have never predicted certainly creating my own business, and certainly not, something, this is, more advocacy than it is
Mm-hmm.
creating a
Mm-hmm.
physical product. Although we'll get into a little bit the difference between nonprofit and for-profit opportunities and what you do. But I've done things my entire career. Even, I tell people the story when I graduated, it was a weird kind of time, maybe similar
Mm-hmm.
to recent graduates this year. And there weren't that many jobs because I
Mm.
graduated in like October. Like I had December
Mm.
graduation, and by the time I finished everything. And so I ended up taking a job in retail. And I can remember my father was like, oh my gosh,
Mm.
can't believe we sent her to school and now she's working at this department store. But because I had a love of shopping, thank you to my mother, I knew all the departments. I knew the China
Mm-hmm.
department, I knew the baby department, I knew the men's department, I knew all the departments because, of
Mm-hmm.
course, I probably had shopped in them. And I was what was known as a flyer. So if
Mm.
someone didn't show up for their shift, I worked in that department.
Yeah.
And, fast forward however many years, 20 plus years later, that's exactly, what has helped me. So I may be working in maybe doing something in automotive manufacturing today, and then biotech tomorrow, and then next week, quantum mechanics, and the week after that, clean tech. And I don't think, I mean, it's kind of schizophrenic.
Yeah.
I don't think I would have been comfortable keeping up with all these different and being able to have at least initial conversations. I always tell people I got about an inch deep in a lot of different areas. So beyond that, I'm gonna be like, that's all I got. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I'm not afraid, and I always say I'm an engineer, so I can figure it out, right?
Yeah.
So most of the time, the people that you are initially talking to probably know even less, about the basis of things, right?
Yeah.
So I could talk to them, and then there's always the internet. If I need to research and get, some more information, I go look it up. But I hope this is when I tell people, I said, you just have to be able to look at the totality of your life and say, I used to babysit. Maybe that's why I'm so good with working with people, right? We're always, not always. Some of us are very black and white. I did this, so I do that. And now you can't not do that.
You can't afford it.
Job titles. Oh, I was the lead buyer. Oh, I was the, head of procurement.
Yeah.
Listen, these titles today, they may mean nothing, or they may mean you're doing everything. And so I tell people, don't get hooked on a title, because you're looking for an opportunity.
Yeah.
You're looking at an opportunity to contribute to a company's bottom line, have a positive impact on their financial performance, and you're looking to grow. You're looking to grow, right?
Yeah.
You can make money doing anything. I always think about the man who came up with the pet rock. You're probably too young to
know
about
well, somebody's been sending out, like, I think potatoes that he like writes on, and he's making a killing.
He must have learned from that guy.
Yeah, like
at least that guy, but that guy just went out in his yard and got the rock.
And got some rock.
He made $1 million in the 70s.
Yeah.
Right. And so, find something that you enjoy. The days of working one place for 30 years are over. They've been over. Don't get caught up on names. Unless you
like that was over when even before I was born. And I was born in the 80s. So I've been alive for a while now.
But we look, that's all that matters. But we can't get caught up even in industries. People are like, oh, I want to work in the software industry. Listen, you want to work somewhere where you can be fulfilled. Not every day. Some days it's going to be monotonous. Some days you just want to, but the overall perspective should be one of growth, right? We want to see linear growth upwards. And if you're able to do that, hopefully you'll never retire, and folks will still be doing something, because I always say, especially for our parents and grandparents, they work so hard, and then a lot of them died. They didn't even get a chance to fulfill
they didn't get to enjoy their retirement. No, it's
so I hope people find ways to generate income. I just saw something that said, what is it? Content creators that went from I forget whatever the number was, 100,000 of them. Now there's 2.2 million. And I'm like, what? Right? A whole new career, a new industry. And so I hope people, instead of, and sometimes you have to do that. I mean, all of us probably have had, let's be honest, less than stellar jobs, right?
Yeah.
Oh, I have to pay my bills. Or
you just do what you have to do.
Exactly. Sometimes you were deceived. I tell these people who are like, oh, I want to work there because they have the pretty glass office and the marble on the floors and
the place that I worked in, where I had my shiniest office, was the place where I was like, if I don't get out of this place, I'm probably going to end up in jail. I know most people think, oh, you're gonna die on the job. No, I would go to jail because I would probably throat punch somebody, and you can't do that. That's just not allowed, right? Maybe in a movie, but real life, it doesn't really work, right?
Right.
And the only thing that has stopped me, I think, from ever really becoming a violent human being is I just know I can't go to jail. I like physical freedom too much.
Exactly.
I like being able to just move about, do what I
Exactly.
want, hop in my car, drive
Exactly.
somewhere, aimlessly.
Exactly.
You know, but no, that's like absolutely right. And like, it's funny, like, I don't think I've shared this, talk about less than stellar jobs, but
Mhm.
when I was studying for the bar exam in like fall of 2019 to like spring of 2020, although I was teaching as a professor, I was winding down how many classes I was taking because I knew like how many classes I was teaching because I knew I was going to start at a firm like April 2020. And
Mhm.
of course, this was before the pandemic started. So,
Right.
like, like those were my plans. And and it's funny because like I forgot about it for a second, but I was actually delivering groceries as like going to the grocery store with my three advanced degrees, and I was in that Target, and yeah, yes, people, I was in Target. Come for
Yeah.
me later. That was years ago. But I was in like the local grocery stores out in West Hampton Beach because like and this is why like overachievers can't do these kinds of jobs
Right.
because we always find the place where we're gonna max out.
Right.
And literally, like I remember I was like pulling in like 5 to 10 grand a month,
Yeah.
going and picking up people's groceries for them. And
Wow.
like and so talking about that, like and I share it because it's so recent.
Mm-hmm.
And I sh- and like and I already had the accolades. I was
Mm-hmm.
already like I
Mm-hmm.
was already on my way to becoming, a lawyer. Like I had the
Right.
degree already. I was
Right.
already a professor, but just because I didn't want to, and I remember it was like very strategic. Like I can't let people down
Mm-hmm.
by taking on more courses when I know if I start in April, they need me to be fully functioning until June.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't be teaching more than 1 or 2 classes in the spring,
Right.
because like although I knew I wasn't going to be a professor anymore, I wasn't going to burn the bridge,
Right.
right? Because too, and I think like what I've got of people who need a job, there's this sense of like entitlement, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, I can't do that job because like you said, like I have that title or or this or that, instead of thinking, oh, I could get my foot in the door, and like you
Exactly.
never know what could happen, right? And so like, I think about people like I was supposed to go to law school in 2009, fall 2009, but spring 2009 I was interviewing people for like a resort wear company that I was working at the time for part-time sales positions who had law degrees
Mm-hmm.
because that was just a bad time to be a lawyer.
Exactly. Exactly.
Kind of like now, right? Where it's like people are getting job offers rescinded. Like you thought you were straight and now like you're like, "Oh wait, no. Like there's a hiring freeze and now they're reneging,"
Exactly.
right? And so like what is some advice you have for people who are in this season right now where they're looking for work, and they're kind of like struggling with the identities they've created around these titles and
Mm-hmm.
positions or even the degree, like, what are some like tips you would give to people like that, who are kind of, especially like younger people, who are kind of like, I did all the work and like I feel like it's not paying off. Like what kind of like encouragement do you have for people that are in that season right now?
I feel like the stories aren't being told about the folks who are thriving. There are folks who they've come up during this,
Mhm. Mhm.
and I haven't done any scientific research to verify this, but I think it's those are the people who are connected,
Yeah.
vertically,
Mhm.
diagonally. It's just not limited to I want to meet all these senior people,
Mhm.
because you just never know when an opportunity is going to come and where it's going to
Yeah.
come and who it's going to come through. And I feel maybe as a society we've become more independent, right?
Mm-hmm.
Years ago, was part of a community. You knew your neighbor knew you, your neighbor knew your kids.
Yeah.
But now we're like one here, one there. And so that's how people, sometimes run their careers. Like, I got
Mm-hmm.
this on my own. I don't need anyone. And, I guess if you're independently wealthy and, you don't,
Yeah.
lack from funds, but eventually everybody's going to need someone, right? You're going to
Mm-hmm.
a reference or someone to introduce you or whatever it is. And
Yeah.
this is the time. It doesn't cost anything. LinkedIn has a
Mm-hmm.
free version, right? You don't have to pay for the premium. Start making connections. I think everyone, like I said, is sometimes, not everyone, but a lot of people sometimes are so hooked on, I went to law school, I'm going to be a lawyer. I went
Yeah.
to engineering school, I'm going to be an engineer. And there are just so many things in between these jobs that are fulfilling, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
One dimensional, right? Who likes just one thing, one type of
Yeah.
food, one type of place to go to? So this is the time to just expand your network. Hopefully it will
Mm-hmm.
be lifelong instead of just for this crazy period.
Yeah.
And you never know. Some people who think they're going to be an A, they're going to end up working the rest of their career doing C or
Mm-hmm.
D
Mm-hmm.
or F or whatever. So that's probably the biggest one. The opportunities that I've certainly had with BWISE or through BWISE have absolutely come because of my network and the
Yeah.
connections I've made and the people that I've met and the things I've said that prompted people to reach out to me. And so that's probably the biggest thing. I see other communities. I always reference, folks in South Asian communities where it's very
Mm-hmm.
collaborative. And I
Mm-hmm.
remember, being at work and seeing, lots of people from that same demographic eating together every day,
Yeah.
lunch, eating off each other's plates. And I was like, oh my,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that would happen in anybody else's community. You would probably
Yeah.
fork
Yeah.
in your hand if you tried to reach
Mm-hmm.
into someone else's plate. But when you look at, certainly their success, in one generation, not only have they become successful, but they're also, as far as salary,
Yeah.
rank more than anyone else, right? How many
Exactly.
of the tech CEOs are Southeast Asian? So you've
Mm-hmm.
gotta expand your base of what you know. Be willing to be taught, be willing to learn, be willing to fail, be willing
Mm-hmm.
to meet, and certainly be willing to help other people. Helping
Yeah.
someone costs you nothing, but you could gain so much from it. So
Mm-hmm.
that's advice I would. And then put some technology, as we see. That's a whole nother series. Um, I want to say, the Greeks were doing technology. Let's not just boil technology down to software. Technology
Yeah.
actually means science and engineering and physics and medicine.
Mm-hmm.
That's what technology means. It's
It's
not like
all of it working together, really,
exactly. And I tell people, I said, listen, the difference between me and a software engineer, if the power grid goes down, I can still do my work. They can't. They can't, right?
That part.
I can still make up some
That
chemicals.
part.
I can still
Oh.
make up some chemicals. They can't. So
Mm-hmm.
don't be limited on this, tech. I see people, oh, I work in tech. Oh, what do you do? I'm an accountant. No, you work in accounting, but your
For
company
a
is a
tech company.
tech company, right?
Well, it's like
Everybody wants to
everyone
be
putting
tech.
AI, like everybody putting AI as part of like their back. Oh, I'm an AI expert. And I'm like, if I know more about AI than you do, you are not an expert.
That's how you're going to have a lot of stuff messed up because you have experts
And
running
some of these
around, right?
some of these people, they're on like committees making like really major decisions because, but again, it's because of their network. Like they have a solid network,
Mhm.
and now they've decided. It's like a lawyer who's been a lawyer forever, never even did like technology transactions, but now all of a sudden they're an AI attorney, right?
And honestly, in some period, they could evolve and grow
Yeah.
quite good, but the first couple years are going to be rough.
Yeah. I
And
mean,
unfortunately, the thing about AI, you can do something terrible. Oh, if I write a terrible proposal, oh, crumple it up, throw it in the garbage can.
yeah.
AI keeps everything. There's
Yeah.
right now where someone, I forget how it goes, but basically they got it out of a book, and in the book it was a run-on, not a run-on sentence, but however it picked it up, it made a new term, and that
Mm.
term has propagated all through AI, which is not right. It's just, it was
It's
a
just,
dash
it
on
was
the,
like a typo or something.
yeah, and it's propagated. They can't even get rid of it. And so I was like, we have to be mindful, and that's why you will never get rid of humans, because somebody will have to untangle something that
Yeah.
AI falsely, we're already saying that they hallucinate,
Mm-hmm.
right? Or
I
just
mean, they
something.
created, I remember like when I was still practicing, like there was a case that came out where these attorneys did a whole brief using AI technology,
Hmm.
and it ended up making up hypothetical cases.
Hmm.
And for me, like I remember I was reading it and thinking, wait, nobody thought to check that? Like they didn't think,
I'm,
oh,
I'm,
I put
I'm
that through. And so like for me, like there were so many other questions I had, like what were some other things that they were doing without the technology where they were just cutting corners? Because my thing is like, how do you submit something to the court that you haven't reviewed?
Well, here's what I see and why I think engineers, traditional, not software engineers,
Mm-hmm.
are going to still be very valid, because the things that you learn, or you're supposed to learn in your
Mm-hmm.
engineering education, is to question,
Yeah.
is to verify, right? Trust but
Mm-hmm.
verify. And so many non-technical areas where the assumption is if it's in a book, it's right. If it's online, it's right. So I don't have to double check it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I can guarantee you the way I read things or I evaluate things, let me double check this, make sure
Yeah.
that's my default. If you give me
Yeah.
something,
It's like if I, especially if it's something that's like, even if I think it's in my wheelhouse, like if it's something that just isn't aligned with what I've seen before, I
exactly.
want to check it because I'm like, it's always, and it's not like, oh, I'm trying to like kind of gotcha somebody. It's
Hmm.
more kind of like, oh, I never heard of this before. Let me
Hmm.
look it up. And
Hmm.
then like you start looking things up and you're kind of like, that that what, and so like now like I use chat gpt um for like initial research process,
Hmm.
because I personally hated the process of going through the different journals and reviews
Hmm.
when I had to do that manually. Like that was not cute. Like
Right.
no thank you, JSTOR volume number 76, like go away,
Exactly. Exactly.
but so like for me now, like because I've done so much research, I know what to like, I know how to check
Hmm.
after AI does it, right? And like there are times where I'm like I'll be reading through something, on my computer, and I'm like, where, like I'll put a question in, like, where did you even get this from?
Exactly.
Like why and I'll talk to it like it's real, like where did you even come up with this? You just making
Hmm.
stuff up now?
Hmm.
Oh, oh, sorry. Like this is the response. Like
Exactly.
imagine my chat GPT is telling me, oh, sorry, just kidding. Nice catch. What? you know I'm like, you even
Uh,
you even
listen,
know the corporate lingo, like nice,
that's
like
how I know they need some black women involved in the development,
you know
because we be like, now girl, I just made that up. I'm sorry, boo.
It's like so funny when I think about it, but like it all comes back to what you were saying, like being willing to like learn a new thing, being
Hmm.
willing to talk to the people, at every stage, right?
Right.
I think that's so important. Like I remember when I switched to like law life, I kind of I had this plan, like I wanted to be the smartest lawyer, and I was like, you're gonna have to work really hard for 5 years,
Hmm.
10,000 hours, they say, to be an expert,
Right.
completely toxic and crazy, but this was my goal, right? And I got into law firm, and I literally, that was the dream, that was the goal. So it was kind of like, if you were giving me an assignment, I don't care how dumb I think you are. I'm going to listen to you. I'm gonna like learn it to a T. Like if I find something that doesn't align with what you're telling me, I'll say, hey, like, so I saw this other term, like, what do you think about this? And
Right.
like, and I had like two kinds of people that I worked with. I had the people that would be like, oh wow, like that's actually a good idea, let's put that in as an alternative for the client. Or I'd have people that would be like, oh no, that's garbage.
Mhm.
Right. But like the people that would always say that something was garbage would be the people trying to like have me put it in later
Right.
as a
Right.
like, oh, can you add this term in? And now
Right.
I'm looking at the term kind of like, wait, isn't that the term that I
Mhm.
gave you like a month ago?
Mhm.
And so like did you ever like have those kinds of situations when you were like moving up the ranks, like, where you're working with people who were maybe not being transparent about like part of your process and like having to figure that out? Like what were some of the things that you did to even avoid that? Or
I feel like a trauma. I've blocked out a lot of the bad things. It just kept the lessons that I learned. One thing I did remember, I had a colleague who became my manager when our
mm,
manager got promoted. And I guess in his attempt to, do really well, he wanted to do really well. He
mm-hmm.
micromanaged everything.
uh,
Like, I always say, you
it's like a
never,
recipe for disaster.
you never want your manager to get caught cold, not knowing what you're working on. So I would copy him on things that I thought, you probably need to know about this.
Mm-hmm.
And he would respond to every email I sent him, even the ones that were like, "This is just for your information, just so
Yeah.
when I ask you, you know." And it would always be like, just scroll down. If you had scrolled down, you would have seen that thing that
Like
I
like I
said. So
covered
you
that
would know,
question. I covered
right?
that
You just
question for
saw
you.
email. Yeah, you just saw email from me in the subject line, and you put all this stuff that had already been addressed. And I said, I know what I'm going to do. I copied him on everything after that. I copied him on every email.
Like
If they
all
said,
the
oh,
minutia.
every email. If they said, the Christmas party is scheduled for whatever, I copied him on that. If it said, oh, we're celebrating Annie's birthday in the cafeteria, I copied him on that. I copied him on everything. He was inundated. So in addition to his whatever number of emails
Mm-hmm.
he was getting all of mine too.
Yeah.
And he finally he was like, no mas, no mas. And I didn't even have to tell him. I guess he figured it out. I was like, if you want to be
Yeah.
involved in everything, then let's get you involved in
Yeah.
everything, right? It's a lot of stuff. I just keep him abreast. He's got work too, right? Your
Mm-hmm.
manager has responsibilities in addition to managing your work. And then I don't know how much longer it was after that I found out that he was diagnosed late in life, very late in life, with
Mm.
ADHD.
Oh,
ADHD, is that how you say it? ADHD.
yeah.
And I was like, that's what's the problem.
Mm.
That's the problem. And so I think both after he realized that and got that diagnosis, and like I said, he was like, she got it.
Yeah.
I was like, okay. And I used to tell people, you need to learn, one of the key things to be successful and to stay sane is you have to learn how to manage your boss.
Yeah.
You need to manage your boss, especially if you have a boss that may have some challenges.
Mm-hmm.
If your boss is a micromanager, or if your boss, doesn't provide cover, for, their employees, you have
Yeah.
to know how to deal with that. And,
Mm-hmm.
luckily or
Like,
unluckily, I've had, all kinds, right? I've
yeah.
temperamental boss who fly off the hand, like, don't tell them anything because they're going to go off.
Yeah.
I've had the one that doesn't say anything. So you kind of have to well, I saw him come out of that meeting, so I'm assuming everything went well because he had,
Yeah. Like there's no download of any information, just
yeah,
keeping it. No. It's
yeah.
so bizarre, right? How, like you said, but they're all types and stripes, right? And
Mhm.
so I think like one of the things, that like is a good takeaway here is we like as individuals need to be adaptable, right?
Mhm.
And we need to like like I remember my students used to always say, "Oh, Professor Ralph, it's not fair that like that shouldn't be and
Mhm.
what shouldn't, and all of these things." And the
Mhm.
thing is, yes, there are a lot of things that shouldn't be,
Mhm.
that like we should be doing this, we should be doing that, but we like, unless you're in a position where you have leverage,
Mhm.
you can't change that outcome, right? And
Right.
so you kind of have to decide, like, what are you willing, like what costs are you willing to pay
Right.
for the things that you claim to want, right? And what like I've worked with really difficult bosses who still promoted me,
Mhm.
still had my back, like
Sometimes they like that. Like, I
yeah, like they,
there are
it,
people
it
that
was
they like
really,
that.
yeah, it was the most like, and like I like it was, I always tell people, I'm like, I would call it 50-50. Like I had like really good bosses or
Mhm.
really like crazy people that were like in charge of me.
Right.
And like, and and so it's like, and sometimes you could have like a really good boss and like somebody who was like not a good person because
Mhm.
they had so much going on in their own
Mhm.
personal life
Mhm.
that was impacting them,
Mhm.
right, on the same team. And
Mhm.
like if you were lucky, you had the nicer person in between you and the big boss.
Right.
But
Right.
more times than not, that person in the middle, that middleman, could create like tremendous problems. And I
Mhm.
remember like even training, like I remember when I was training managers for like retail chains at some point, and training managers how to manage up when they had a difficult person, like, and telling like, and if it was like somebody I knew personally, being like, okay, so this is like, they seem like this, but like if you just do these like three things,
Mhm.
like you're okay, like you like
Right.
like make sure these three things are on point, and like they'll be like, they will ride you for like your first 6 months, but then they'll leave you alone, kind of like that person left you alone after you
Mhm.
like flooded them with emails,
Mhm.
right? And like I think like that's where like what you were talking about with the South Asian community, that's where it comes in, like having this camaraderie at work, having this willingness to build, right? And for me, like, and this is like how I wear rose colored glasses sometimes, like
Mhm.
I envision workplaces where it doesn't have to be siloed like that, where it's just each community, like we're all there
Mhm.
to achieve the same goal.
Mhm.
So why can't we work together, right? Like
Mhm.
at every layer, right? It's like I think about like within like law firms, for example, it's very like hierarchical. Like we tried to pretend that it's not hierarchical, but it's like, listen, you got first year, second year, third year, fourth year, hierarchical.
Mhm.
And then you have partners, senior partners, and so it's like why, like to me, I never understood the idea of like somebody being more senior not wanting to train and develop people that were more junior, you
Mhm.
know people at the same level not wanting to collaborate to help each other grow. But I think it goes back to what you said about people kind of being on this straight path, right?
Mhm.
And then you mix that with the idea of like there not being enough,
Right.
right? And
Right.
so now you have people that are like, oh, there's not enough, like there's just not enough opportunities for everyone
Mhm.
because there's a limited view of how they can use their degree, how they can use their time.
Exactly.
Meanwhile, there are like 85,000 ways to be a lawyer.
Right.
And get this, you don't have to work 100-hour week to make the
Right.
same money that you're working for
Exactly.
now. And you can actually like be just a happier person because like you're focusing on things you actually like, not the things that you're pretending to like
Right.
because you like the prestige of saying you work at some organization or some
Right.
firm or whatever. And so like what are like some of your thoughts for people that are graduating this year, like this spring, right? I think about what it was like when I graduated spring of 2008. Um, I don't think we had fully at that point realized what was ahead.
Mhm.
um and like I remember for me, like when I figured out I couldn't go to law school fall of 2009, like it felt like the rug was pulled on from under me. And so like, what's some advice you would give to people, who are graduating in the STEM industry right now, like, who, like, yes, like using LinkedIn and networking, but what are some other ways they can position themselves, if they don't already have a job lined up, or maybe they had a job but it was rescinded, like how can they prepare themselves, for the months ahead?
You mentioned 2008, and for some folks it feels like a lifetime ago, but it was very difficult. It was a
Mhm.
difficult time, and a lot of people were out of work.
Mhm.
Now here we are again,
Mhm.
2025, and the challenge is now you've got people with mortgages and college tuitions and retirement and healthcare issues, and they just want to work,
Yeah.
right? And so, companies are like, somebody who knows what to do versus someone I've got to tell what to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm gonna take the one who knows what to do, and so it's going to be challenging
Mhm.
for recent graduates,
Yeah.
young people in general, because if you do not have anything, and it didn't used to be like this, if you do not have the ability to contribute on day one, right? It used to
Mhm.
they gave you a week to figure out where the lunchroom and where the bathroom was. Now you are expected to, on day one, you should be taking meetings and scheduling and doing things
Yeah.
by the end of
Yeah.
the first day. And so just realizing and being patient.
Mhm.
A lot gets said about the different generations, but one of the things I say that, regardless of how old you are, separates you from other folks is you are able to see other perspectives. And so as
Mhm.
a recent graduate, especially in STEM, you have to realize you're at the back of the line,
Yeah.
right? There are other people who gotta, like, I feel like if you're a college student, for
Mhm.
not all, because there's some who put themselves through school, don't have families to help them.
Yeah.
But if you've got a parents in a bedroom in their house,
Take
you
it.
you can be okay for, certainly the short term,
Mhm.
but don't get like, I should have that job. Listen, everybody should be able to earn money and take care
Mhm.
of themselves, right? Life is not fair for other
Yeah.
people in a lot of times. And so just, I hope this generation has more humanity maybe
Yeah.
than previous ones, because you see so many terrible things happening, and instead of it being me, 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 I understand
Mhm.
I didn't get that job because I didn't understand. But at the same time, like, I wouldn't have stopped there. If there was a company I believed in and I thought was doing great work in an area that I was interested in, I would say that's fine. I understand it. I'm still interested in working there.
Yeah.
I'm gonna, if you have any events, I'm gonna come so I can, keep abreast of what you're doing, and then maybe in some period in the future,
Mhm.
then there's a role for me, and I won't be so competitive with so many people currently out of work. But I want folks, and this is not a broad sweeping indictment of any generation. I think it's just the world that we live in. People are
Yeah.
so impatient. I want it now. I deserve it. Why can't I have it? And we always used to say when I was a kid, there's always someone smarter than you. There's
Mhm.
a girl, there's always someone prettier than you. There's always so this mindset that
Yeah.
only you deserve this, and there's
Mhm.
no one better than you that can get this. And
Yeah.
that's not true for
Mhm.
I
No, it's
almost everyone. I don't know anybody who's like, I'm the number one. Only
no.
I can do that unless you're an athlete or something competing, and
And still, like, all it takes is like one person to beat your record and then you're not number one, right? Like Usain Bolt, like he was number one and then he was no longer.
the great listen, I will say, and I think most people would agree, the greatest competitor you will ever have in life is time. And
Mm-hmm.
so many people, perfect example. Look at Usain Bolt. All these world, like this athlete broke records.
Mm-hmm.
Now they're 40, right?
Yeah.
They're not
Yeah.
breaking nothing but hips.
That's good. We've now transitioned to the comedy special part of the.
We'll be here all week. Be here all week, Monday through Friday.
No, but
Two shows a night.
no, it's so true though. I mean, it's like I always tell, like when people, like I often, like when I meet new people and they get like a little bit of wind of me, because like I can't give you full Aubria in the first meeting.
Right.
I think that's like, even for me it's a lot. Like I'm like, yo, chill, like what's your problem, right? But I'm always amazed by the people who just, it's like they think like they figured out the person,
Mm-hmm.
right? Based
Mm-hmm.
on one
Oh.
interaction.
Mm-hmm.
Like now you know who this person is or whatever.
Exactly.
Or like my new favorite thing to say is like, people think they could just Google you and they know who you are.
Exactly.
As if
Just
the internet don't lie. As if
and
everybody,
then
like.
that's just a small snippet, right? If you've ever gone somewhere and you saw somebody you know knew from
Mm-hmm.
a different part of your life, from church or work,
Yeah.
and you're like, what are you doing here?
Yeah.
Like, what are
No.
you doing here?
Like it's so funny. It's fun. And or like they might read the first, like the first, line of your Google search, and
Right.
now that's who you are. But if they
Right.
kept scrolling, they would
You would
they would
see.
they would see like, oh, wait a minute, there's like a lot going on here.
That's right.
And
Because the average person is probably, 3 or 4 or 5 things.
exactly.
That's the limit, right? But
Mm-hmm.
if you are like me, a lifelong learner, or someone who has a curious
Yeah.
mind, or is just outgoing and is open to new
Mm-hmm.
experiences, yeah, you may be a pirate and a chef and a lawyer and a
Yeah.
day school owner, like the most
A
interesting people,
dancer,
a dance,
like.
the most interesting people, like someone who, I was an accountant for 45 years and I worked at the same company and I did the same thing every day. Okay. I mean, I hope,
I
there's
hope
nothing
that's
wrong
what
with
you
that.
wanted. I
Or
hope you.
I hope there's other parts of your life,
Mm-hmm.
because that can't keep you warm at night. But I hope there's things in your life
You mean
that,
the calculator can't? Come on now.
no, cannot. But and that's why I said, we get hung up on things that are cognitive, like I can see you lawyering.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I can see you being a doctor, or you're tall, or you're not, or whatever. But not the stuff that you can't see. Wow, that
Yeah.
person is so creative,
Mm-hmm.
or that person is so compassionate. That we get
Yeah.
hooked on things that, in the grand scheme of life,
Don't
mean
matter.
very little. I always say, jokingly say, like, I know I'm gonna survive if the zombies ever attack, because I'm like, I watch MacGyver and I know I can put some stuff together. I'm gonna stitch something together and hot ride a
You
car or
know.
something. It's the people who were like, I do the same thing over, and then some people, that monotony
Mm-hmm.
comforting, especially if you've had a traumatic
Oh
childhood,
yeah.
right?
Well, it's like this sense of stability, right?
Exactly. I understand that. And,
Mm-hmm.
I always tell people I haven't watched a TV show in probably 20 years. If it's not Monk, or Columbo or something, I don't know, because I need something in a hectic world when I've got a
Mm-hmm.
lot of things going on that is the same. I
Mm-hmm.
can't watch something distracting like Grey's Anatomy when I'll be like, oh, what's happening now?
Yeah.
I need to know, this is my favorite episode of Columbo. I love this one. I have to have that. I have to have that. And so people know so little about themselves. If I had to say one point,
Yeah.
we know so little about ourselves
Mm-hmm.
because there's no encouragement for self-discovery.
Yeah.
At the end of folks' lives, there's probably far fewer people who are like, That was a good run. I saw, was it Zig Ziglar or somebody said that he wanted to show up with a raggedy body, that he had lived life so hard that his body was worn out.
That
Not from
sounds like
illness.
something he would say.
Yeah, not from illness, but from just doing so much and having
Yeah.
a great time. Right.
Like I was just out here doing the most,
Exactly.
and like
Exactly.
and that's kind of where I am. Like I feel like I've played within the lines. Like I've gotten the degrees. I've done the white collar work, and I've done some of the blue collar work, and I've done creative stuff,
Right.
and for me it's kind of like, okay, what kind of impact can I have, and so it's like and I'll give you an example. Like last night I just happened to be I don't doom scroll. I know people always say, "Oh, I was doom scrolling." I don't have people in my feed that make me feel doom and gloom.
Oh, exactly.
I do not. Like
Exactly.
if you become too stressful in my
Block.
LinkedIn feed,
Block.
I get rid of you.
Yeah.
Because like I'm not about that life. Like
Mm-mm.
you don't get to stay looking young and cute stressing
Mm-mm.
about everything that
Exactly.
like,
Worrying will give you wrinkles. Hate
no
will give
thank
you
you.
wrinkles.
I'm
No.
good, Um, but last night, like, a Harvard law student posted because she's trying to amplify her friend's issue, but her friend just had her job rescinded. Which is why I was like, really, I'm so kind of, if you were kind of like, why is she asking me this question again? It's like, it's kind of like top of mind for me because like it's something I saw coming probably 2.5 years ago. And like when I started talking about it, people were kind of like, there you go, Aubria, there you go. Like, and I was just kind of like, okay, I'll tone it down a bit. And now like
Come to fruition.
now the wave, like I think it was like, a little bit here, a little bit there over the 2.5 year period, but like there's gonna be like a deep cut that's happening. And so like she posted about this, and like Harvard,
Yep. Yep. Rescinding offers. Like who would have thought?
and
Like if Harvard is rescinding offers,
and
then no one is safe.
right, and that's kind of where I was at. I was like, and so like normally I don't do any kind of like free consulting or whatever, but when I saw that, and like she kind of talked about her friends, like mental health or whatever, like just how she was struggling and stressed, I was like, hey, like if she needs anybody to talk to, like tell her to connect with me. Like I'll like if she needs like a boost, like
Exactly.
I know exactly. Like
Right.
I have been in her shoes.
Right.
Like tell her, hit me up.
Exactly.
I know all the tricks,
Exactly.
And then like last night after like I got off LinkedIn because I was like, I can't like be on
Can't
LinkedIn
keep.
anymore
That's
right
right.
now.
You need a
And
quiet mind to go to
and I
sleep.
just kept thinking about it. Like it was just in my head. And I'm always talking trash about online communities.
Right.
And then I kept thinking, okay, you can't like help people individually anymore. Like you're past that. Like, and I have hundreds of other people's resumes in my, like when I need to find my own resume, I can't find it.
Right.
Because I'm finding every Mary, Joe, and Sally before my
Exactly.
own, right?
Exactly.
And so I was like, I'm like, Lord, like, how do I do it? Like, how do I help, right? And I was like, just sitting there brainstorming, and then I was like, you know what? I'm gonna create the SGP Legal Ease Institute. It's gonna be a community. I'm gonna try to make it as cheap as possible, but I need people to pay so I can like get them
Oh.
get
Oh.
them actual resources.
They need
Because
to
like
pay,
because
even if you
I
have
can't,
$1 million, a gajillion
because for me it's
dollars, need to
like
pay.
to me it's like you have to be willing to invest in yourself.
Exactly.
And I've always invested in myself. Like in my like every degree, like before my law degree, that was cash money I paid. That was like, oh, we need you think you want to open a nonprofit? You know what? They have this 1 year master's in
Mhm.
nonprofit finance
Mhm.
and management. You should get that degree.
Mhm.
How much is that degree? 20. Okay, I'll pay the $25,000 and get the degree. Like, but like you wouldn't catch me out here. And I think you were talking about this. We're a little bit over time, but you won't catch me out here buying an LV bag
I think with
or
the new economy,
Louboutins
with
if
this new economy is health is wealth, community is health, family is wealth, right? If you look at like I do that now and I see my closet and I was like, why was I spending this kind of money on something that's on my back,
mm-hmm.
right? So yeah.
Yeah. And but to me it's like if you're willing to invest in these things that
Mm-hmm.
ultimately like it doesn't matter. Like if your house burns down, like that's it. Like
Yep.
yeah, you might get some money from the insurance company, but like the money you get, you won't be able to go and replace it in today's
Exactly.
economy. So like and now we know they're making all this stuff in China anyway.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
how you feel? But
Exactly.
that was my propaganda moment, guys. I'm so sorry about that, but I did spend some time in fashion. I get it. I get why you do it. I have nice things too, but I think in this season we have to be willing to invest in our personal and professional development. Like
Exactly.
if you need therapy, if you need a coach,
Mm-hmm.
there can't be an expectation. And I'm really just echoing some of what Erika noted earlier today. Like if you need if you actually need these things, it doesn't make sense for you to go and spend your money
Exactly.
on anything that's not going to help you get what you need.
Exactly.
You like you don't want like we're in a season right now where you need wholesomeness. You need the things that are gonna that you can build on and grow and develop. And when you kind of look at like Erika said earlier, when you look at your life, you're thinking, oh, you know what? I invested in myself. I bet on myself, and
Exactly.
and this was the result. And there isn't this kind of like nobody owes you anything. Like I tell my mom that, but like I tell it on the flip side where I tell her you don't owe anybody jack. Like you've given enough of yourself,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so like if I as my mother's child can tell my mom,
Mm-hmm.
stop worrying about your kids, like
Exactly.
stop trying to live your life for us, do things that you want for
Exactly.
you. Like on the flip side, I have to remind myself, like I can't tell her that
Not live it.
be entitled
Right.
to everything that she is or has,
Right.
right?
Exactly.
And I think that's what we kind of have to get there, right? And so like if you need therapy, like get therapy. Even if you have Medicaid, I know Medicaid pays for therapy too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like get whatever you need so that you can thrive in this season.
Mm-hmm.
But like now is not the time to like lay down. And like Erika said, there are actually a lot of industries that are thriving right now.
Mm-hmm.
You just have to be willing.
Exactly.
You have to be willing to say, you know what? I never thought that I could do this, but cool.
Yeah, I'm doing it.
I mean, that's how I became a professor. Like
Mm-hmm.
I didn't go to school thinking, oh, they're gonna give me a professor role at
Right.
CUNY. But I got a random master's degree in medieval studies.
Mm-hmm.
You cackle, but it was not the right degree to be getting. I know that, but it was a fun degree.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember going into it thinking, you're paying cash, it's fine. You
Mm-hmm.
won't have to pay back later, so it's
Mm-hmm.
okay.
Yeah.
But that degree paid for itself because after 2 semesters of teaching, like I graduated with a teaching job
Mm-hmm.
for the fall at a college as a 26-year-old.
Wow.
because I was willing to just go outside of the box. Like, how do you go from I'm going to go to law school to, you know what? We'll just get a master's of medieval studies.
Right.
It'll work itself out, right? But
Exactly.
just that willingness to kind of say, you know what? This will be fun,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so be willing to try the thing. For those of you who are thinking about grad school, who maybe aren't getting into the market right away, think about how you can get a degree that's going to complement what you already have and position you for better financial security. Whether you become an entrepreneur, you build something on your own, or you end up working for an organization. But I think we can no longer be silly about the types of degrees we're getting when we go to college. Like if you want to learn about a particular time period, particular issue, you can do that as outside learning.
Mm-hmm.
Be practical. Because we're not independent. Like, most people are not independently wealthy.
That's true.
The ones that look independently wealthy are usually the brokest.
That's true. That's very-
And the ones that you like, man, that looks like a homeless person.
Yep.
They can probably invest millions of dollars into your idea.
Exactly.
And so, like, don't take for granted the people that you come in contact with. Don't judge people based on follower count on the internet.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of people who have actual power and authority to move and shake right now,
Mm-hmm.
they're not on the internet. They don't have time.
That's true.
Like, you can meet them as a barista in Starbucks
That's true.
faster than you can meet them on LinkedIn.
That's right.
I know a lot of people I'm connected to that people probably are like, why are you, how did she get connected with that person?
Mm-hmm.
That was from all my time in retail.
Mm-hmm.
Met a lot of very interesting people who were like, here's my number, or, stay connected. And so, like, at the end of the day, like, having the right attitude, these are some of the themes that I heard, right? Have a right attitude, be willing to adapt, when you must, like, I can be stubborn too, but there's like a moment in my stubbornness where I'm like, all right, girl, I know you said you were gonna go in the left direction, but it looks like you're gonna have to go right for now and
Mm-hmm.
sort it out, or you're gonna have to sit here and wait, right? Be patient, which leads me to be patient. Be patient with yourself, but be patient with the people you interact with, because you never know what people are dealing with, you know? And like, I think, as Erika said, we need to be more compassionate. If we just took a minute to consider that people are going through other stuff, you don't always need to know what the other stuff is.
Right. That's true.
All you need to know is, I go through stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Other people must be going through stuff too.
Mm-hmm.
And then adapt and
Exactly.
just adjust accordingly.
Exactly.
Any last words, Erika?
To your point about just give yourself grace, give other people grace, take care of yourself. We're in a time where we don't even know if we have health care. So do what you can to stay healthy, mentally and physically. And you don't know what's going to happen from minute to minute. So just find joy in things, simple things, right? And just try to get through this life and on to the next one, the best way you can.
Yeah. Well, thank
Mhm.
you so much for tuning in, guys. Tune in next week. Next week, we are going to be talking about financing the pivot. I mean, like, we got some good stuff for you. Last week, you got the entrepreneurs telling you all the dirty secrets to scare you away from entrepreneurship. This
Mhm.
week, you learn, like, listen, like, you can forge a path. You can create pipelines. Like, you can actually be the dream catcher and help
Mhm.
people, get their dreams. Thank you, Miss Erika Jefferson, for being here. and just lightening up our day.
Thank
Good night,
you.
guys.
Good night.